What's up? I'll drop some comments if you can hear me. Let me know that you're out there. So here's the deal. I do a little live stream. It's not Sunday, but it's close enough. Hope everybody enjoyed their 4th of July yesterday. So trying to figure out this live stream software. So hopefully everything's working properly. Yeah, if you can hear me, give me like a yes, thumbs up, something in the chat. Just to make sure we're good to go. So here's the deal. Gonna do some bead rolling today. Gonna kind of show you the basics. If you know anything about bead rolling, some of this stuff won't necessarily be new to you. I mean, some of it might, I don't know. I've actually covered a lot of this stuff in videos before, so the great thing about going live, though, is that you guys can ask questions, and then I can cover those things. And, you know, if I did an edited video, it may not necessarily be like that. So, yeah. I guess let's get started. I don't know what the deal is. This thing's awfully slow. Now hang tight for me for just 1 second. I just want to make sure everything's working like it should. Okay, so it looks like it's just really, the latency's really big on this. So questions, I won't see the questions probably. I'll probably see them late, but I'll try to kind of scroll through these things as we go and catch all the stuff you guys might have questions about. So first, I guess let's go over the bead roller. So this is just a 36-inch throat bead roller. Here, let me help you out a little bit. So we're looking at a 36-inch throat bead roller. I think this one is made by, I think I got this one from Woodward Fab. I got it years ago. I'm not sure they still make the same one, but what you will find is, in my personal opinion, all the ones that look similar to this are probably all made in the same place and then sold to different companies or distributors who put their name on it and then sell it as their own. Now, you will find like the Mittler Brothers units now that are like billet, and they're obviously different. And then I think some of these that you can get that look very similar to this actually have different features on them, and I'll kind of go over that. There's a couple features that I don't have that are really good features to have, and I'll kind of go over why they're good to have and what they are, obviously. So like I said, 36-inch. Some of them you can get in 24s. My personal opinion, spend a little bit of extra money, get the extra length. You might need it one day. I mean, a 24 will get a lot done because you got to think about a panel. You know, if you can reach the center of the panel, then you can always flip that panel around most of the time and kind of get it from the other side. So a 24-inch depth bead roller should be able to get you like a 4-foot panel in there. What I find though is a lot of times you have to flip the dies and do weird stuff. So like if you had a 24-inch piece, you could fit that in here no matter, or you know, like a 36-inch piece, 30-inch piece, whatever. You could fit that piece in here as you kind of roll that thing around. Plus, the other thing you'll find is unless you're bead rolling something that's round, you got corners that got to kind of slide through there as well. So that kind of helps you, you know, when you turn those ends. Or if you're doing like a seat or something, and the seat itself is only, say, 24 inches wide, well, at some point you're gonna have to roll the whole head of that seat in there. you know, kind of do some stuff. So you got to kind of factor in the entire length and width of the panel, and you know, obviously a longer one's going to be better in my opinion. So, like I said, Woodward Fab, I think this one was like right around $1,000 if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember, to be honest with you. You know, there's obviously there's better ones, and I'm gonna tell you why they're better. Whether you need it or not is for you to decide. I mean, as far as, you know, the way that this thing kind of bead rolls and how true it is and the pressure that it can put, I think it's just as good as the other ones, or it gets the job done as good as the other ones, in my opinion. What you'll find are the extra money is in some of these features that I'll tell you about. So let's see. Check. Now drop me some comments, man. I ain't got no comments in here. Let me see if this thing works. All right, so got the bead roller. I've made a table for this thing that just swings up into place. I've just got a little bolt here on the bottom. And then I've just got to where it kind of bolts up. The tables are good because a lot of times these bead rollers are going to want to kick the material. And as it kind of twists the material, it's not effectively bead rolling it like it should. Now it'll still kind of get the job done, but not as effective. So if you have a table, it kind of helps a little bit keep that panel straight as you roll that thing around. There's times where you don't want a table too, though. If you've got you know, pieces that already have curves in them, or yeah, there's just times where you want to, sometimes you want to be able to bend a piece one way or the other. As you kind of roll it through there, you want to kind of give it some pressure. And so not having a table is also beneficial, which is why I have this thing where it kind of swings out of the way. What else? So this particular machine has forward and reverse. You might be able to see it over here. It's got a little switch. Kind of flip that thing to forward, reverse. Basically just kind of dictates which way the rollers are rolling when you push the pedal. And that's the one thing you probably don't see is there's a pedal on the floor. As I depress that pedal, it kind of rolls these things. The pedal on this one is, you know, it's variable. So the more I push the pedal, the faster those rollers go. The one feature that this one doesn't have that you'll find in some of the higher end ones is that you can actually determine how fast full pedal goes, which is useful because on this thing, if I want it to go real slow, I got to be very touchy on the pedal on how much I push it, versus if I had a dial where I could dial it down, you know, full pedal would still be slow. And sometimes you want to go real slow to get these things, you know, to get accurate curves and that sort of thing. What else? So it's, you know, like I said, forward, reverse. One of the other features that you'll find on some of the other machines too is that the upper shaft has an adjuster on it. So you can actually, let's see here. Make sure you can catch this. So you can actually adjust where the upper die rides compared to the lower die. So right now, on this machine, they're always lined up. The upper die is always lined up with the lower die. And so it's, you know, for stuff like this, it's always true. Where you may want that adjustment is if you want to kind of offset that bend. You know, you can make that gap bigger. See if I've got some I can show you. Let me grab this right here. So for instance, like a seat like this, the distance between this inner bend and the outer bend on this bead can be determined by how you adjust that. So you can, if you adjust those further apart, you could actually make that section in between the two bends bigger or smaller, which is can be useful for sure. Otherwise, you're just kind of stuck with what you got, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it looks good. What I've done on this one, I've actually got some spacers that I just kind of keep on hand, and if I do need to space it a little bit, I've got these. You can get away with a little bit of spacing. The ones that offer that, that offer that adjustment, you can space them a long way. So you have a lot of flexibility on how much you can adjust that upper die. So let's talk about dies. You got your standard bead dies. So for instance, hopefully you can see that. So these dies just ride like this. You have basically a male die and a female die, and they just kind of pushes down into that lower section, and that's what creates that bead. These are pretty standard. These are, if you're just you're just rolling beads in flat panels for a little bit of structure, these are perfect for that. These are mostly used in like floor pans and that sort of thing. You see them a lot in like race cars. What happens is when you have a flat piece of aluminum, the aluminum itself is pretty flexible, especially if it's a big panel. And when you roll that die, that little bead in there, it basically creates a third dimension. So right now it's only two-dimensional, it's flat. When you roll that bead in there, and it creates a third dimension which won't let it bend. It makes it really, really stiff, which is why you see those in floor pans, of race cars and whatnot. It's just to basically stiffen that panel up. Now what I'm going to show you is a lot of times when you use these kind of dies, the bending of the metal will stretch it, causing these things to kind of potato chip a little bit. There's ways you can kind of combat that. Most of the time for me, I kind of let it do its thing, and then when I go to fasten that thing in, I kind of stretch it back and then fasten it. And it's not usually a problem, but I will show you tonight how to kind of combat that a little bit. So, I think I'm losing my stove here. Let's check on the comments and see if we got any comments yet. Make sure this thing's working. I don't see any. I don't know. Just keep rolling with it. Kind of hoping to have this thing finished before y'all jumped on, but didn't happen. So let's start off with basic bead rolling, straight lines. For structure, it's going to go, in a race car or something, you want a flat panel, you want to kind of stiffen that thing up a little bit. And you're just going to use a standard bead roller die like what I've got here. Now these come in different sizes, so this one is thicker than the one I showed you a second ago. And then they also make them much thinner too, so you got these little tiny beads as well. So one thing you can do is got my little sip too over here. So one thing you can do is if you stuck this in here and then just cranked it down and rolled a bead in there, it would, potentially potato chip this thing. But if you could pre-stretch it, it does help out a little bit. And when I say pre-stretch, I mean what you want to do is you want to stretch it one way and then flip that thing over and then actually roll the bead over top of the first one on the opposite side. The downfall of this is you have to mark both sides. You have to mark them exactly the same. Otherwise, it could get kind of funky. I just kind of took, Sharpie and just guessed. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of follow the first line when I roll the second one. So this is what they call a little pre-stretch. Now, so the way that this works is you have this handle up here that has some threads on it, and as you rotate this thing down, it moves that shaft closer to the bottom shaft, and that's how you kind of get your depth. I get a lot of people ask me about the hand crank ones. The problem with the hand crank is that you got, you're cranking with one hand, you're trying to guide that panel with the other hand. And in my opinion, for what you spend on one of these machines versus a hand crank, I would just save, a couple extra $100, buy one that's motorized, and be done with it. That's just my personal opinion. A lot of times when you're rolling these things, you need every hand you got plus some. And then the other thing is too, is like, man, if you had to do a lot of that stuff, you're going to be cranking constantly. So that's my opinion. That's what I did. I had some friends that had the hand crank, and I'd kind of watch them struggle with them things a little bit. And so when I went to buy one, I was like, I'm not buying one of those. I'm going to get a motorized one. All right, so what you want to do is when you're bead rolling, you want to kind of keep an eye on how many turns you're putting in these panels, because especially when you're doing something like on this seat, and you have to kind of roll a bead in this section, when you go over to this section, you want to make sure that the depth on that thing is the same. So you want to know how many turns you got in these, and that way when you kind of move to another section, you can put the same amount of turns in there and it'll all kind of look the same. Or if you happen to be rolling the same bead, you definitely want the depth to be the same. So I just got it touching now. I'm just going to give this thing like maybe 1.5 turns. And I'm just going to run this thing through there. I'm just going to follow this line. So then keep track of your turns. Actually, what I like to do too, so if I was here, I keep track of the turns all the way out where I got room. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where you got plenty of space. You just put it back in there. And count down 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I bet you that wasn't 5. I bet you that was only like 4. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so you can see that things already started to warp that panel a little bit. Just that pressure itself has kind of warped it a little bit. So now what I'll do is I'll flip it over, and when you're kind of making these, you want to make sure that you have it laid out where the show side will be the last side you do. Now, one downfall to these dies, it does leave these little lines. I don't know if you can see those. I didn't really, obviously these marks don't line up with these marks because you can tell they're crooked, but it leaves these little lines, these little score marks on there. And if that's a problem, then it's a good reason not to use these dies. A lot of times you can clean that stuff out though. I'll kind of hit it with some scuff pads or some sandpaper. So I went 5 on that side, but I want to actually make a bead in this thing this time. Actually, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. I actually want to make a bead in this thing this time because we just did a little pre-stretch the first time. So I'm going to go like 7, 6, 7. So there you can see we got a nice bead in there. So there you go. Still a little bit wonky, but not as bad as it would be if we just made one pass on one side. Now where you're going to get your bend is here, and that's usually hard to kind of get out of it just because of that third dimension that we've put in it. But you can work a little bit of it out. So, yeah, pretty flat. And pretty flat. And you've got some nice beads in that thing for some structure. Like bending it this way is going to be really tough. So make it nice and firm if it's, say, like a floor pan or whatever. It's just something you don't want vibrating around and moving. So it's pretty easy, right? Let's see here. All right, so that's that. Let's kind of move into something else. And just so you know, too, I'm using, this is 063 3003 aluminum. So the 3003 is the alloy that I use. This is 063, which is the thicker of the two that I use. So everything we're working today is going to be the thicker of the two, which is typically harder. It's the harder one to kind of bead roll and bend. I don't think this thing's going to work out. I've also got 050. I keep a sheet of 050 as well. And usually if I'm doing a lot of decorative stuff, I'll use the 050. It's just a little easier. Something that kind of needs a little bit of structure, I'll kind of break out the 063. All right, what's next? So I guess I could go through the different kinds of dies, at least the ones that I've got. You can get a ton. There's a ton out there available. You can kind of do anything you want. They even make like decorative dies that do like barbed wire and all kinds of crazy stuff. So these things just slide off. And then that's where you have your adjuster. If you need it, you can kind of slide some, shims on there. The ones that are made to be adjustable, it's basically, this whole thing is necked back that far, and then they've got a special attachment that they put on there that you can adjust out and in. So next, the next die I've got is what they call an art step die. I hope you can see this. So it's got a little step in it. So unlike that one where it's got something in the middle, these have like a little step in there. Let's see if I can get that thing to focus. Maybe if I can get out of the way. So hopefully you can see that little step in there. And basically it just, when you kind of bring those two together, it just makes a little step in the aluminum. These ones they call an art step die. They work pretty good. They are metal. So what you're going to find is any of these dies that are made out of metal, as you turn on aluminum at least, it's going to kind of mar that aluminum. It's going to kind of dig it up as you turn it. So like the die that we just used, I would only use that thing straight. Or if you're making some big sweeping curves, you could probably get away with it as well. But you know, it's bad about digging in there. Like those little marks that you saw on that panel. So there's ways to do it where you don't have those little scribe marks, and that is by using like a plastic style die. So these are, I think these particular ones are made out of Delrin, or maybe they're made of something else, but it's very similar to like a Delrin product. These are by Mittler Brothers here. And you can get these in a variety of different shapes and sizes, and you can kind of run these things through, you can run aluminum through them, and you're not gonna have to worry about it marring the aluminum. Even when you're going straight, it's not gonna leave those marks. And then really, you know, if you're doing any turning, you really want something like this. Now what they offer is a ton of different kinds of these. You could potentially just get 2 of these dies and have the lower one like this, and then have the upper one like that. And there'd be a step in there, and then when you kind of, you know, when you crank that thing down, it's going to put that little step in there you want, or you could do it like I use it. And this is what they call a tipping die, so it's just kind of a sharper edge on it. And when you line these up, you can kind of see that it's got this step to it. The reason I go with these is because I like to have this really sharp tipping die edge for other things, which I will show you later on. So let me see what I got. Yeah, let's put these on here. See, the cool thing is too is you can kind of reverse these. So you can put them on one way, do one thing, you can reverse it, put it on the other way, do something else. I typically always use the tipping die up top, but you don't have to. I had another washer, but I don't. All right, so now let's say we're going to do like a little quilted panel. And you kind of see I've made one in the past. This is one that I kind of messed up on. Actually, after I quilted it, I went to try to bend it straight and put a crease right there in the middle. And so it ends up in the scrap pile. So the one thing you want to be aware of on this is which way the step's going. And you want that step to be, you know, the right format for whatever you're trying to do. So on like a panel like this, where you're going to do some quilting in the middle, you want this step to go in, or at least, you know, most of the time you'd want this step to go in. I guess you could have it go out. Today we'll go in. So I just make sure that I line this thing up where it's going in, which is going to be this way. And this is where I was talking about a table's nice, because as I crank this thing down, it's going to want to push this like that. All right, so now you can see that it's got this little little step in, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but the marring is just of the plastic. So like that'll just wash off. So as I make those turns, it's just, those turns are just where the plastic is kind of marred a little bit. Mighty, look at that thing. That's what you get with the bugs, especially when you got the door open. All right, so let's do this. Let's do the quilted pattern in this thing. And what you'll do on these is you change the lower die. I like to leave this upper tipping die in there. It kind of does pretty good, but in order for you to be able to cross over another bead roll, it's like as we cross each other, if you had anything else in there, it would basically just straighten out the one you cross over. So as you kind of roll that thing, it would straighten out the other ones. The way you combat that is a rubber wheel. A lot of guys I've seen them use like skateboard wheels for certain stuff. You really need something that's soft enough where it's not going to straighten out the other beads. So pull that out. And this thing's super soft. Like I can squeeze it with my hand and kind of make it move. So then other than that, other than like a tipping die and a rubber lower die, let's see, tipping die and a rubber lower die, that's all you need for this. That and just patience, because it takes some time. So I just kind of snug it up and give it 2 cranks. Maybe not. Maybe we need more than 2. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna need more than 2. Try that again. So you can kind of see those. And you don't need much to kind of pull off this aesthetic. You don't really need much pressure. Let me finish up this last one, and then we'll flip sides. And normally, I'd probably take my time a little more on this. Try to be a little more precise, but for time's sake, let's get these rolled in there. So now you can't really see the front side. Well, yeah, you can. So you can kind of see what it's done. It's kind of give it that quilted aesthetic to it. You can really use your imagination however you want to when you do these, because like I did the step in and then I did the actual quilting down. So like you could do the step in this way but then flip it over and do the quilting down this way where it actually looks quilted, right? And if you wanted to later on, you could come in and put rivets, in each cross section to kind of make it look like it's quilted. So there's all kinds of ways you can do it, but that's basically how it works. It's got a rubber lower die, you got a tipping die up top. You could even use a metal die if you're not doing any turning. It'll probably give you a more pronounced line in there. I like it where it's kind of got that, you don't really see any lines, you just kind of see the bends a little bit. All right, so what else we got? We did standard beads, we did some quilting, kind of showed you how to do that little step in there. I could even come back, I could take this lower die off. Take this wheel off. Now, I will tell you, I've actually used these art step dies as tipping dies before in the past. They work really well if you're just doing a straight line and you want a really pronounced line. They actually work versus, using this phenolic one or Delrin or whatever it is. Because these will wear out over time. They're meant to be soft, and so they kind of wear off. And you really just want to use these if you're doing a lot of turning and that sort of thing. We'll throw this one back on here. See if we can make that step a little more pronounced. So like when you're doing this and you're doing this turn, if you had that adjuster where you could really slow it down, it helps out a lot. So it's a little bit better. I actually flipped this lower die around and tried it the other way just to see how it would do. And yeah, I mean, it gave me a little extra step. Now, this flange on the end of this thing is pretty small. Tell you what though, let me get some acetone and we'll clean that thing up and we'll be able to see it better. So I always just use a little acetone. See if I can. Damn bugs. A little acetone and all your marks will come right off. So maybe you can see it. Ooh. I'm about to kill that bastard. Got him. Damn, horsefly or something. Anyway, you can see it a lot better now. Now that there's no lines on there, no Sharpie marker, and you can kind of see what you get. Now it does potato chip it a little bit, but that's when you go to fasten that thing in there. You can pre-stretch these a little bit with English wheel too, but most of the time I just kind of, roll with it, and you can kind of rivet that thing in there like you need to. All right, so what's next? Let's now with those couple techniques I've already shown you, you got the step going on, you got the rubber lower, you've got the standard bead. You can do almost everything you'd want to do with just those simple setups right there. Within reason, obviously. But if you've ever seen those guys that do the art, I'm pretty sure you've seen those. That art is basically done with one of these dies up top, and then they probably use, some kind of preferred die on the bottom, depending on what they're doing. If I had to guess, just based on what I see, they probably use, a rubber die like this one on the lower, just so they don't mess up the stuff that they've already done. All right, so speaking of that, let's switch this lower back over. Now this is not the best lower die for what I'm about to show you, but it works pretty good. And that is basically tipping a piece of sheet metal. So, for instance, let's see if you can see this. You can see that line that I've made on this, it's curved. So for instance, if this was like a wheel tub, and you need to have a flange on it for the top, you would need to kind of break that edge over the whole length of that thing in order to do that. You can do that with a bead roller. You basically take a tipping die, which is why they call it a tipping die, because you're basically tipping that thing over. The one thing I will tell you, if you can do away with these bolts that are hanging out, either recess it, which I think this one's actually made to do. Let's see. Yeah. See if this is going to work. So that's how you want that thing to be when you're tipping a piece of metal, because you want this thing to be able to go straight up and down without hitting that bolt that's hanging out. And so the way you do this is you basically just a little bit of tension on it. The first pass, I'll just kind of do it normal. So then you just keep running that thing through there. Now what you do is you want to put a little upward pressure on this thing. Like that. You can see that it's already starting to kind of tip that thing in. Let's do a couple more passes. Good stuff. Now, a perfect wheel for this would not be a rubber wheel. It'd be more like a skateboard wheel. It has a little bit of softness to it, because then you could really kind of break that thing on the lower die. Right now, that thing wants to give a little bit too much, which makes the job a little bit harder. But it can still be done. So you can see we're making progress. Now what I like to do is I actually take it over to the shrinker and then just give it a couple little shrinks in here, because what will happen is it's going to be really tough to bend this thing all the way over. If you bent this all the way over, it actually move this panel. It actually arc the panel, and so you'd have to shrink it back anyway. Let me hit it right quick. Get a little more tension. So that's where we're at. Let's see. I don't think it's gonna. So progress. Making some progress on it. Can't believe there's still no comments, you guys. This thing must not be working. Unless I've got it to where you can't. Not like I've made it to where you can't post comments for some reason. Anyways, we'll just keep rolling. So yeah. So that's basically how a tipping die works. You just kind of tip that end in, shrink a little bit, tip in, shrink a little bit. If I had a harder bottom wheel, it would actually move a lot more each time I did it. Because I don't have it though. Kind of stuck doing it the way that I do it currently. But you can see what I'm after. So what'll happen is as you tip this in, this is gonna kind of do this way. You might be able to see it a little bit. And then you just shrink this edge to kind of bring it back flat. When you tip it some more, it's gonna kind of do its thing. Shrink it some more to bring it back. Let me see if I can. Well, I don't know. I have no idea. What else do I have? Oh, I've got another set of dies I can show you. Let's see here. I tell you what, that horsefly earlier, it ate me up, man. That thing got me on my back. So the last set of dies that I've got are radius dies. So these things kind of just fit in there like that, and they do exactly what they say they'll do. They kind of bend a little radius on that. You've got them in different sizes. So you can see that that's a bigger radius. These things work nice for, well, all kinds of stuff, to be honest with you. Hopefully these bolts will... Shit, they're not gonna... What the hell do I use? Let's see here. There we go. So with these dies, you can basically take, let's see here, you can basically take a flat panel and give this thing a run through. So you can see there it puts a nice radius on it. So it's not a step, it's more of a curve. Where these really come in handy is like if you're going to put two panels together. So for instance, you know, you got a side panel and you got a top panel, and you want to basically have them curved where you're going to weld it. You basically can put half the curve on this side, half the curve on that side, and together the two equal 90 degrees. Yeah. You can see how that works. Like I said, they come in different sizes. Let's see too if I can do this. It's not really straight, but so obviously this panel's not straight, but you can kind of see what I was talking about. If you wanted that thing to have a curve to it, you basically, you know, radius one piece, radius the other piece, and then you just weld it there in the center, and now you got a nice radiused edge on that thing. So those work good. They come in all different sizes. I think I've got hang tight. So the biggest radius I got is that bad boy there, which I think is probably like a, gosh, it's got to be like maybe a 1 inch radius on that one combined. So when you do the whole thing, it's one. Actually, I mean it's 1 inch, but when you do it on both panels, you get that continuous 90-degree bend. All the way down to, well, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch maybe. So it's just a little tiny radius on that bad boy. So there you go, there's that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. Oh yeah, I got some other stuff too. Let me show you these other dies I've got. thing that's cool about these too is they're stepped, or they got like a guide on them. So you'll notice that on the lower one, it's got this like fence out here, and this one just sits inside that fence. So you just push the material all up against that fence, and it kind of guides it nice and straight. So let's see here. They also make like a manual step. So you can see those, that's a manual step. These are in metal, and so they don't do good around turns and such, but they work pretty well. You don't really have any adjustment on how big the step is. You're kind of stuck with exactly what you get or what you got. Got a couple of those. It's just basically smaller and larger steps. And then they also make something like this, where there is no step. I mean, there's a step, but when you put the two together, it's like basically touching. And what that would do is actually cut the material. So you could cut material with this thing. Basically just like a roll shear, just kind of sheared as it rolls. I think that's all I got. It's a good basic bead roller tutorial, huh? No, maybe. Hell, if I had comments, I would know. So we're just gonna have to roll with that. Hopefully that's pretty good. I don't know what the deal is with this thing, but anyway, there you go. There's your live stream tutorial. If you guys liked it, drop me a message. If it worked out for you, we'll do some more of these. Probably do something on the English wheel at some point, maybe planisher, and then maybe some sheet metal work. I mean, I've got all kinds of stuff that we can do these on. Damn, I really wanted some comments, though, because that was kind of the whole idea. So anyway, maybe I'll try to figure that out. And, yeah. Until next time, y'all go do work, son. Right? You know how it goes?